conference, and I'm absolutely stoked to be here. Just sometimes, you know, as Christians, and especially as a professional, you know, not a professional Christian, but a professional in the industry, being a Christian, a lot of times you feel like an island. You know, the industry is very dark. You know, we've got zombie games, and we've got sexual games, and we've got hyper-violent games, and different things like that. And a lot of times, it's very difficult to be the light and the salt, you know, in such an environment that is so oppressive. And so it's difficult to continue to walk your testimony. Sometimes it's a lot easier just to stay cloaked and masked and disguised and just do your craft because it's what you love to do and your talent and everything. And then you just want to, you know, find an exit. You want to leave before you confront it with anything. So it's great to have conferences like this to where like-minded individuals and people of the same faith can get together and splash each other and encourage each other and inspire and realize that we're not alone. There's a lot of talent out there in the industry. Remnants, they may be, but there are vast numbers of Christians out there and that have, you know, Jesus as their Savior and their Lord, but they're lost, a lot of them, in what to do. They're leaderless and they're scattered to some degree. And so I see this as, you know, I'm kind of going on like Lord of the Rings epicness here. I see this as the light, you know. But I want you guys to understand just how important something like this is. I don't want you to take it for granted that this is just another conference or just another church meeting or something like that. There's something at work here. There's something stirring supernaturally in the spirit that's going on here. It's not a mistake that we're here. It's not a mistake that you have a passion and that you have a desire in you to be here and to learn, to become empowered, and to network together. There's a reason for that. We've been hearing about stories and desires and journeys and the mountains, which is awesome. And so, even though I'm going to be talking about best practices in games, and these are more foundational tools that people like myself utilize in the industry, whether at AAA studios or even at smaller independent studios, these are just tools that we find foundationally using all the time. So literally they are best practices, but it's kind of interesting because what it is I'm going to be showing you here, after everything that we've just heard this morning, it's going to be kind of cool to see how that gels together. You know, I think it's going to take on, at least for me, because I've given this presentation before, but never in this context. So I'm really curious to see what the Holy Ghost does with this and how it just kind of moves it around organically. So, anyways, let's go ahead and begin. We're going to work. Sorry, it's Adele.
We forgive you, though.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just hope the computer doesn't take it down. I can say that, right? Well, all right. I'm just going to give you guys just a real quick word of warning. 2 words of warning. One, when I start to talk about this stuff, God, I hope this works. Thank you. Okay, keep the cheers and the hisses down. Please. You're not helping them. It'll happen again. 2 things. Now it's going to take 5 minutes for this to warm back up. 2 things that happen a lot of times when I start talking about this stuff. Well, 3 things. 1, I get very passionate. 2, I start to levitate. Literally. I mean, I will start to levitate because I just, you know how it is when you're so filled up with something and it's just like you're floating on the deck now and you're walking on water like Peter. And 3, I'm kind of all over the place because that's just kind of how my mind works. So you've got GPSs, you'll be fine on your phone, so take them out. Got to be cool and you'll track with me. But how many people are actually working in the industry? You actually have a job creating games that is paying you money. Wow, half of the room. That's fantastic.
All except the
Okay. All right, well, how many of you are obviously enthusiasts that are doing it as a hobby or a future you want to get into the industry and do this for a living and get paid? Okay, again, about half. All right. How many are just gamers and you just love video games and you just like to know a little bit more about what goes on behind the curtain? Nobody. Excellent. So, hang on real quick. I apologize for this. I knew I should have brought my other computer. This is what, all right, everybody cover your eyes. Don't look at my password.
It's the same as mine.
Yeah. It's dots. Well, what I'll go ahead and do is...
It's both combined. By your forces combined, we are a blue screen of death.
I guess so. So my background, just to give you guys just a little brief synopsis, I think there was a little bit of it given in the bulletin, or the brochure, or whatever it's called. I've been in the gaming industry for about 20 years. I actually got into doing video games right out of high school. I graduated in '89. I was in, my art class there. I had done a couple of illustrations that the art teacher behind my back submitted to a science fiction and fantasy competition that was in Orange County, where I'm from, in Southern California, without my knowledge. And I found out that she did this. I was very upset because I was very insecure with my art. And when I found out the pieces she actually submitted, I was even more upset. Because I thought, out of all of the things that I've drawn, you chose these two. That's just absurd, crazy. Anyways, I didn't even show up for the judging. I thought I had a snowball's chance. There's just no way. Okay, I won. And it was crazy. My parents ended up showing up to the judging. I stayed at home because I was, like I said, I was insecure, and it was just another form of rejection that I was going to get now from an official panel. And so they brought home the plaque. They brought home the certificate. My dad was ticked. He said that, I've got to break out of this shell of, this insecurity and this fear that somehow my work doesn't matter, or my drawings or my illustrations aren't good enough, they don't touch people, or nobody can see into them or anything like that. And the funny thing is my dad gave me this very interesting acronym of what actually the letters of fear represent. And it's false evidence appearing real. And that's what fear literally is. And I had deceived myself in thinking that, my art was just for me. And it's not. It's for others. It's to influence. It's to stir things in them. And anyways, long story short, one of the judges on the panel happened to work for Nintendo. He called me up 2 days later and said, Mark, what it is you drew I thought was very original. It's not that it was very technical, and I don't even think really the lighting and the shading was all that great, but the character, I guess, was what really spoke to him. And he sat there and he said, would you have any interest in making video games? Right? 18-year-old kid. Of course, I said, I'd love to make video games. It sounds awesome. I don't know how to make a game, though. It's like, oh, it's okay, we'll teach you. They did that back then. There wasn't schools, and there wasn't academies and different things like that where you could pay uber amounts of money and go and learn this stuff formally from an educator or somebody from the industry. So I started doing pixel art. We started working on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then it became the Super Nintendo, the SNES, doing all 8-bit artwork. We drew our pictures out on graph paper, because graphs represented pixels. We would make characters that were 12 pixels high, but we thought they were epic in nature. They were amazing. We had 2 pixels for a head. We had a light flesh color and a dark flesh color. We had a head and we had a neck. But when you looked at that, you were like, oh my gosh, he's crying. Look at the expression. He's in anguish. It's all relative, right? Nowadays, we've got shaders that realize pores and sweat glands and specularity and all this, but back then we didn't have that. And so, it was one thing to look at this pixelated art and be like, oh, yes, it's awesome. And then we animated it. holy cow, mocap's got nothing on this. This is amazing, you know. And anyway, so I just, humble beginnings is really where I came from, and is where obviously I am now, because this ain't working. So. Now, I'm going to go a little bit into my presentation without it actually being a presentation. Has anybody heard of the game design document, the GDD, or the technical design document, the TDD? All right. These are two documentations that are literally the Bible of video games. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is the game design document. Everybody should read that. It's just not left for the designer, the producer to read, or the engineer, or anything like that. Artists need to read it, the texture artists, the lighters, the animators, the effects artists, the programmers, the tool programmers, the shader artists. Everybody needs to read this because, like I said, it is foundational to what the game is.
Can you preach that to my team, please?
Yeah, I
They're
guess
not
so.
here.
Because it's, you know, I mean, it's one thing to sit there and to, you know, if you're an animator, you know, be waiting at your desk and waiting for that piece of paper, that email to come in that's going to tell you what to do. And that's all well and great, you know, I need you to make this character, you know, this girl, you know, or whatever, run or dive or jump or somersault. But that's fine, you can make that happen, but if you have no context to the story, we've been learning a lot about story today, actually. If you don't know anything about the story, you don't know a lot of the technical limitations that you might be needing by way of either frame rate or how many frames you can have, or whether it's going to be keyframed or you're going to be using a little bit of mocap along with keyframe. You're really at a loss. Hang on, here we go. As to what to do, and a lot of times people are like, yeah, well, you know, the GDD, this game design document, it's full of other facts that I really don't need, that aren't important to me, that don't relate, but you know what, they do relate to you, because when you make a game, it's just not you. You're working in a team environment, and it's very important for you to appreciate and understand what everybody else is having to go through, because it will give you perspective as to what it is in your little world it might be, but how you contribute to the whole. That'll what start flourishing team unity. That's what'll start giving you a better understanding of culture, and it'll start to broaden. It'll start to broaden your idea of what your part to play is, other than just making something animate for the heck of it. All right, this is really
Tim,
quite now, yeah. I'm going to turn it off and try to turn it back on. Okay, let me go ahead. Luckily, I've got some of my PowerPoint on my iPad, so Apple's going to save a little bit. All right. Now, one of the things that I had, and we'll go through it once it comes back up, and it's the state of the industry where we're at right now. And the state of the industry seems to be pretty cookie cutter. I mean, it seems to be all first-person shooters right now, does it not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I've got a slide coming up to where I took an image of Modern Warfare 2, Medal of Honor, and Killzone 3. And I just took just random snapshots of the game and I lined them all up together. You couldn't tell one from the other. You really couldn't. Blood on the screen, gun barrel in front of you, shooting at something that was faded away in the atmosphere somewhere, you know? And then that was something that I had shown about 6 or so months ago. And then I did another slide to where I showed the new Battlefront, or the new Battlefield, sorry, didn't Star Wars Battlefront. The new Battlefield, Brink, Rage, and Homefront. You know, the new games that are out and that are coming out right now. And I did the same thing, and I'm like, nothing's changed. They're all the same. It's just, it's crazy. And it gets really depressing when you see stuff like that. But then I also have to go to the other side of the coin and realize that, but there still is innovation, but it's happening at a very humble level by way of independent games. The Farmvilles, the Cityvilles, the Angry Birds, the Minecrafts, the Super Meat Boy, you know, I mean, all these crazy games that are really original and they're fun and they're inventive and they're made literally by people that, in a sense, almost have nothing to lose. And that's what's happened with a lot of these big studios right now, is they have a lot to lose, and that is why they play it safe. That's why there's Modern Warfare 3, you know, that's why there's Call of Duty, you know, 10, or whatever. I mean, it's just, you know, there's all these rehashes of the same franchise, the same game, you know. We did it in Star Wars, Force Unleashed 2, you know, we had the first one, did relatively well, we're gonna make a second one. Why? Because it's safe. Lego Star Wars, the same thing. We have Lego Star Wars Saga, Lego Indiana Jones, you know, and the Lego franchise keeps going. Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, Batman, you know, all DC, whatever. Because it's safe. And I understand why a lot of the studios do that, because, you know, it's been proven that there's a market out there for it. But it's like you get a lot of these independent studios that there's no risk for them. They're not investing huge amounts of money. So really, they're having to go back. It's almost come full circle. You know, like the old coin-op arcade games, where they didn't have a lot to show and to give by way of graphics or animation. All they had really was gameplay. Very repetitive, but very fun. That just kept people pumping quarters into the darn thing in order to get to the next level or the end of the game. Independent games, mobile games, social games, different things like that, they provide a lot of that. Again, they come full circle to where they're really about the mechanics. I mean, the artwork can be fun, and it's campy, Angry Birds is hilarious, you know, and this, you know, I mean, that's just, I love that sound. My daughter goes around the house doing that all the time. And, you know, so I'm always going around as a pig. And she just runs into me. Where was I going? See, like I said, GPS people. I ain't lying. It is. It's so true. I've got the PowerPoint coming up now. I love the laughs.
Yeah, I'm an artist too, that's why I can say it.
So here's the thing, is basically what I'm talking about, you know, with the AAA studios and whatnot, and the independent studios, is the fact that the choices out there for people that want to get in the industry, you know, either at a professional level or even at a casual hobby level, is infinite. You know, a lot of the tech is out there for you to do things for free, you know. And there's so many different genres. There's casual, hardcore, mobile, online, console, web, handheld, you know, all of these different things. But it still takes talent. You know, it's not enough just to know it. I mean, you still have to have a passion, you still have to have a talent for it. And the funny thing is having been in the industry for a while, one of the things that I've observed, and I've told a few people this, is that the industry is kind of made up now of the 3 no's. And I mean K-N-O-W, like, no, like no. And it started out with what you know. Your gifts, your talents, your craft. Okay? Then at some point it went to who you know. All right? That became very, it went into who you know. All right, so networking became very important. You know, sometimes it wasn't just enough just to have talent. You needed to. But now the industry has come to a point to where it's now who knows you. And so networking has become very, very important in getting yourself out there, knowing your story, what it is you like to do, what you're passionate about. Having a portfolio that's strong is really, really important, and getting that in front of a lot of people. Not in an annoying sense. I mean, you don't want to be the neck, where people are brushing you away. But at the same time, going to gaming conferences, going to lectures, or where the industry is going to be is really important. Critiques on your portfolio from people that are professionals, again, is really very, very important. There's this video I want to show you. Boy, I had no idea how to pin on the PowerPoint I was going to do. But I have a lot of images and pictures and videos, so it just makes what I'm talking about just that much more juicy. What's that? I don't know. We'll soon find out. Let's just try and do it. All right. Thank you, Jesus. All right. So here was. Can you guys see okay?
No, it's totally different. It's yellow, not red.
What's that?
Filzone's totally different. It's yellow instead of red.
There's one in every crowd. So here we go. This is just exactly what I was talking about. And then, again, not much difference. So here's, we were talking about the state of the industry, where people feel that there's a lot of unoriginal titles, things are tired. Everybody's just kind of, just getting over the violent thing. I mean, who's sorry. I'm like seriously trying to hold everything still because I don't want to whisper on this machine. So please. Let me turn it out again. Anyways, doesn't matter.
You're getting over the violence.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. You guys have seen Dead Island, the previews for Dead Island at all? This total zombie game where it's just, it looks awesome, all right? I confess. It looks so cool, all right? It's just like slow motion shooting. It's just like the head. You just watch literally the skin separate. It's awesome. It's bad though. Anyways, my hypocrisy only goes so far. So anyways, what I did is I found this video that was really really interesting about what's wrong with the video game industry, and this comes from a number of professionals. And let's just hear what their opinion has to say.
Even seeing E3 now, there's a lot of similar looking games. Because I think that's not very good. I used to be a huge fan of games before.
I used to be a huge fan, now I'm not.
Too many games that are unoriginal. At some point, you've seen one shooter, you see them all, and so I always like to see the cutting edge stuff. And unfortunately, sales drives a ton of that, and that makes sense. But you see some games, Beyond Good and Evil, or some of these games like Psychonauts that are amazing to play, but not a lot of people try them. And I like to see more games that are fun like that.
There are a number of institutions and organizations that are advocating
Turn the logo all the way.
marketplace for existing consoles and existing genres.
I think it's still kind of secluded. Like it doesn't feel like we're as mature as a lot of the other entertainment industries, right? We bring so much money and we do so much in pop culture, but I still don't think that the recognition is there yet. So I think we're still kind of growing as an industry and trying to feel it out for ourselves.
Well, I think the big thing wrong with the industry is part of kind of what's right too. We have so many different platforms to work on, so many different places we can bring electronic games that we're kind of diffused in the big scheme of things.
Some of the games, you kind of wonder if they're really good things for kids to be playing. It's probably the worst thing about the industry.
I'm not so sure if there's anything wrong with the industry. I think it's very obvious that the industry is now seeing the importance of getting, like I said, those original ideas, and better graphics from the same game will start to wane eventually.
I see the market is divided pretty clearly between the casual gamers. There used to be games like Mario Brothers that everyone would enjoy, but I don't see that so much.
Good. Oh, good, we got that. All right. Yes, I was a translator. But again, getting back to the fact that even the industry itself is kind of hamstringed by what's making money right now. Is tired, is violent, is the same looking beautiful graphics just put with another kind of contrived story. Not saying that all the gaming stories are contrived, don't get me wrong. But even the industry is understanding the fact that, yeah, we really want to break out of this. I mean, we want our marketing people and our PR people to really be able to, say, we're going to give you tons of money to go do something completely absurdly original. That's just, a lot of studios just don't have that, and everybody's really wanting and desiring that. And what I think is really funny, and this has really nothing to do with my PowerPoint, but this is just something that I just feel really led to say, is I think that in Christian gaming, it's the fact that we are always seeming to follow, something that somebody's already done, because again, we're scared. We don't want to step out on the edge of the cliff and try something new. We want to see something that's been proven and done. But yet, we're hearing right now from the industry that even they're tired of that. They're looking for new. They're looking for fresh. Something to think about for Christian gaming. Break out of the mold. Step out of the boat. Get on the water like Peter. You sink, it'll be okay. Christ is going to be there to pick you up. The Holy Spirit's going to be there to download into you whatever is going to be needed. It just needs people to just start stepping out of the boat and doing something, and not shrinking away and fearing that rejection or insecurity, like I did when I got out of high school. This competition thing. So this is just something that's becoming more and more revelation to me all the time, and I really encourage you to consider that. All right, so let's hear what's right about the industry.
Well, I think the big thing that's right about the game industry is that we are trying to focus more on building things that the consumer wants, and there's a higher degree of professionalism kind of across the board within the industry. And again, the push for quality is really what's helping the whole industry as a whole move forward. It's become a lot more accessible to everybody. So while I know hardcore fans may feel alienated by that, we've learned from our experiences, at least at Lucas, with LEGO games, with Clone Wars and such, that accessibility and playability are really important because it broadens the audience, which in the end benefits everyone in the industry.
I think there's a lot of variety, and I think that's a good thing. I think that the better we can have different genres, different things represented, that helps everybody.
I think that you see the game industry focusing more on making higher quality games today than you did before. I think that, we realizing that, you just can't throw something out there and expect it to sell, even though it has a great name or IP behind it. That doesn't work today. Players are pickier today. Players have less money to spend today. There's a lot of titles coming out all the time. So you have to stand out. And I think when you see Wii platform, it really kind of brought in a whole new audience that's never been in playing consoles before, because it offered a whole new experience that never was offered before.
We're seeing.
Did you see that guy? Was I the one that noticed he was just
Yeah.
he's like bouncing like he's on like some kind of electric horse or whatever. It was funny. He's just like nervous. I'm being filmed right now. I don't know what to do.
That's actually his normal way of talking.
What's that?
That's Richard's normal way of talking.
Don't say that, because now I feel like a complete tool for.
Are
you being serious?
Yes, that's his normal way. He just normally has a lot of energy
right now for that. That was just totally mean. I thought it was just like a nervous tick. Like, I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do. You know how you like to play with your fingers?
He has an incredible amount of creative energy that's just seething within himself.
So bad. No. Oh, a little moment there. All right, back to my father. This guy plays like my father. I didn't really get to buy that. I don't know what you're playing in. Don't do this to me.
Well, I think the big thing in playing consoles before, because it offered a whole new experience.
I'm so sorry.
That never was offered.
You have a Windows Dell. It's okay.
As the gaming industry gets a little older, we're seeing older and older people involved. So it's really becoming an acceptable activity, way to have fun.
I think what's right with the industry is we're starting to
it's funny when a lot of these people were getting interviewed because they were working at studios that still like to play it safe, but as soon as they had the opportunity to give a voice, they're just like, oh yeah, man, we want originality and this is what we want to do, but inside they're like, we can't do any of this stuff. We're so sorry. But we can, potentially. All right, so we kind of discussed a lot of the kind of the fun original titles out there. Obviously, Cityville, Super Meat Boy, Mafia Wars, Minecraft. Very cool. One of the things that I've actually been noticing at conferences, GDC and PAX and E3 and DICE.
I am so sorry.
What are you doing?
Is I've the independent section is growing at a lot of these conferences. Where students in school, teams from different schools are coming in and they're showing their games, or just smaller indie studios are there and they're showing their games. And one of the things that I'm noticing is, all right, now I'm going to kind of over dramatize this a bit. Far be it from me to do that. Is you get these executives coming from their ivory towers, descending from on high, from the EAs and the THQs and the Ataris and different things like that, and they're just kind of just going around indie section, looking at stuff, making mental notes, sometimes scribbling things down, and everything like that. And then they're going right back to their studios and being like, okay, here's what we got to do. Here's what I've seen. I've seen this technology proven out, blah, 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 blah. Can we do it and whatever. And so a lot of indie studios and a lot of independents will go to these shows understanding that their work is exposed and it could be ripped off by a studio that took them months to do. A studio can turn around and do it in a couple of days because they can just throw bodies on it and then totally undercut them. But at the same time, they're hoping that they'll be able to show something original, that a studio that is dying for something original, but they just really can't do it because they don't have the time or the budget or the resource. Well, they have the budget, but they just don't have the market that has been tested or focus tested yet in order to launch a Super Meat Boy or Minecraft or something like that. But yet, if somebody's already kind of proven the technology out for them to where they can just take it and turnkey it, but they really don't have to invest in the research and development, somebody's already done that. That's what a lot of these independents are waiting for. They're like, look, we've spent all the blood, sweat, and tears developing these innovations and these game mechanics and this design. We just want somebody to just buy us outright and take it. So it's kind of a catch-22, I guess. It's just, I don't know, whatever you can get from that. All right, so we kind of talked about where you want to go in the industry. And we talked about the 3 knows: what you know, who you know, then who knows you. Networking is obviously very important. Good friend of mine, Kat, I did this interview with her. She's in a dark room. I did this interview with her about a year ago, and she just started working at Blizzard as just a QA analyst. This is basically a nobody. Well, thanks to all the QA analysts, right? But I mean, this is like the bottom of the totem pole. She's been at Blizzard now for a year, and she's already become now a project manager. Okay, she's worked her way out of that, and I need to do another interview with her kind of as a follow-up, is how much progression have you made in 12 months with the desire, with the vision, with the focus, and the passion, and networking? Because she's very relational, and she is not afraid to get out there and tell her story and say, look, I want to be more than just, I love Blizzard, I love the games, I love playing, but I want to be more than just in QA. I want to have an influence in this. And so she kept looking for those opportunities. Well, I'll let her tell the story.
My name's Kat Perry, and I'm a QA Analyst 1 at Blizzard Entertainment. I wanted to share with you guys a little bit how I got started and how I got where I am today. I've loved games since I was little. I knew it was going to be my passion. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't know how to get there quite quickly enough, or even what I needed to do in the first place. Basically, I went to college for programming, and I went for a year. I couldn't get another loan, so I got kicked out.
What college did you go to?
Art Institute.
Art Institute?
Yes. Orange County.
Of Orange County?
County. Oh my gosh, my old stomping grounds. No way. Excellent.
So I went to AI for a year. I couldn't get another loan to continue. I got laid off from my job in the same week. I got kicked out of my house in the same week. I was pretty much in the pits. And what I did was I took the last money that I had and invested into going to GDC. Bought my plane ticket. A friend of mine helped me with the hotel room and the actual ticket for GDC. And I went to every party. I went to talk to every person that would listen to my story, basically. And what ended up happening was I went to the Blizzard party at GDC. I talked to one of my friends that I knew at Blizzard who was a producer, who I actually met by going to the midnight release of Wrath of the Lich King. I didn't know anybody there previously and went out to an event, and that's how I met him. So he hooked me up with one of his friends that listened to my story, and he was like, you know what, I want to help you out. And he told me to email him my resume, my cover letter. So as soon as I got home from GDC, I touched base with him. I got everything done, sent it to him. 3 months later, I had a call from Blizzard saying, hey, we're interested in hiring you. And I got an in-person interview, and that's how I got where I am today.
Wow, awesome. Now, what kind of things did he coach you on things to put on your resume?
I didn't really have much help with it, actually, to be honest.
Wow. Did you do any kind of research as to how to put a resume together or anything like that? Or?
I have previous experience in the industry. Before working at Blizzard, I worked for a small publishing company called Crave Entertainment. Well, going through school, going to GDC, going to like social events like that, especially with hiring managers or people like Jim Rivers that really help you put your resume together, is like the way that I learned how to do it. So that's how I got my resume together. It kind of just was like, okay, this is my related experience, this is what I have, and I sent it. And the most important part, I think, was how passionate I was. And like, I've been playing WoW for 4 years. I've always wanted to work at Blizzard Entertainment. It's just what I wanted to do, and no one was going to stop me.
No one was going to stop me. I love it. She was going through hell, literal hell in her life. You know, kicked out of school, couldn't get another loan, kicked out of her house the same week, scraped all the last bits of money that she had to go to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, you know, and get the plane fare over there and everything. I mean, talk about desire. Talk about just having a nothing to lose attitude. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to get to that extreme. I'm just saying, just let this inspire you, because that's kind of, wow, that's epic. All right, so starting out with video games, you know, kind of the pipeline of creation is, you know, so many people want to start out with just going straight to doing 3D models, straight to building epic environments, and really what it comes down to is just quickly sketching out concepts. It is so much easier to iterate with 2D art than it is with 3D art. It takes very little time. People, you know, especially concept artists, are usually very fast in Photoshop, and they can start to realize contours and composition and lighting very quickly before we have to actually take it to more of a technical artist to start building it out into these worlds. And it starts to allow us to kind of figure out how we want to do the beats, how we want to do the pacing and the play mechanics. So we literally, for like the Clone Wars, we draw up these storyboards of how we wanted Anakin to behave with a lot of the environments and a lot of the NPCs and the baddies and the enemies, call them baddies. You know, about all the different types of hopping routines. Again, we're keeping things very loose, very silhouetted, grayscale type of colors. Not a lot of detail there, but just enough to notice volume and form, scale. But again, it's just iterating and just getting ideas out really, really quickly. And so, you know, again, we just did a lot of rough pose-to-pose type of sketches. We would do just really quick animatics, trying to kind of feel how we wanted certain things to look or move. We know we wanted the battle droids to be silly and stupid and just basically saber fodder. You know, but we wanted to make sure that Anakin, the stuff that he did, felt very epic. Like when you just pressed one button, he'd do something spectacular, which was very rewarding to the player. And then we have our conceptual artists draw very, you know, dynamic types of key poses of either how we wanted him to start or how we wanted him to end. Because that really just showed us a lot of his attitude or the character's attitude or the story of where the character need to begin or where we want them to arrive. Again, very quick iteration. Sorry, I just threw that in there just because.
The mule that bites back.
Yeah. So now, I mean, here's an example that is basically just like, you know, a lot of people in the gaming industry, as well as, you know, students are just like, oh, but I don't want to do this stuff because it looks so lame and it's unrealized, and, you know, can I just go straight to this, please? You know, where, you know, things are fun and they're dynamic and they're colorful and they're beautiful, but again, it's an iterative process. You know, we need to block out levels like this. We need to have these simple animatics so we can start vetting things out before we start bringing lots of people into the production that have to build all the lighting and the shading and the, you know, the effects and the backgrounds and different things like that. So I've just got this saying that I say, video games are like sausages. Better to not see how they're made, because they do. They start out dog squeeze, ugly, like this, you know, and eventually get to that. But it's all an iterative process. The quicker you can get an idea out and realize it, you know, and work on it while it's still in a very loose, iterative phase, the better it will be when it comes to actually finishing to a finished production. And in video games, even though we're at a point in technology to where we can realize a lot by way of shaders, by way of animation, by way of you know, disk space on Blu-ray and different things like that, we're still couched by limitations. And you can either do two things. You can either shun limitations or you can embrace them. For the Clone Wars series, you know, when we were doing the video game, I actually sat down with the director of Heroes Circle, Dave Filoni. And Dave Filoni worked with Lucas on the Clone Wars series and the animated series, and basically we came to this idea of, you know, Star Wars is very CG driven. You know, all the movies, you know, they're very epic in scale, and the monsters are larger than life, and the vehicles and the battles are larger than life, and everything is trying to have a realistic nature to it, like you know, it's actually physically real, like you could actually believe it in some capacity. Clone Wars took a totally different shift to where we wanted to create a world that existed all on its own. So if you look at the Clone Wars, has anybody seen the Clone Wars series on TV or anything like that? Or commercials of it? You know how the characters are very exaggerated. You know, they're very thin. Their features, even though they're smooth, they're very chiseled. Like if you look at Kenobi's, you know, beard, it gets very faceted on the bottom. And if you actually look at the textures of the characters themselves, the textures are, I mean, you can see the brush strokes, the raised relief of the brush strokes, and that's all intentional. It was supposed to be very artistic in nature. Even the animation, you know, there was a lot of wrestling back and forth. Do we use motion capture animation so we get this nice fluid weight shifting and, you know, these very subtle inflections? It's like, no, we've already gone for chiseled contours and features. We're already going for this very hyper stylized brush relief stroke of textures. The lighting even has its own kind of tone and its own shades and volume. Let's follow suit and come full circle and let the animation be all keyframe animation to where it's traditionally done. So that's why you don't have a lot of the subtle movements and weight shifting. You know, everything's very, you know, squash and stretch to some degree, and pose to pose, where it starts out really slow. It's really fast and then comes back really slow, because we embraced the limitation. We almost made our own limitation, but we owned it. So again, like I said, Clone Wars animation was never to be realistic, so to speak, because we didn't want it to be contrary to the world. So now also, talking about limitations is, having worked at the different studios, I've worked on a lot of licensed productions. Worked with Warner Brothers on The Matrix, Synergy, Terminator, Mission Impossible, and Lucas obviously with Battlefront, Clone Wars, and TFU. And the thing is publishers, again, we're talking about safety. Publishers love working with IP that's already established, because there's already an audience out there, there's already a core market out there. But the problem is that one of the things that I found when we were actually creating, when Terminator 3 was actually being made, which was an okay movie, the game was horrible. But anyways, the point being is the fact that we were making a game in line as they were making a movie, and it was really, really difficult because the production studio was the one driving the art direction, and they were the one that was driving the pacing, and we were kind of like, coming along behind them, trying to pick up the table scraps, that were falling, and trying to get little bits and pieces of information. And so we would be able to go into their studio, they would set the screenplay down, and we'd have 2 hours to read it, but we couldn't take it with us. We had to leave it there for security reasons. And so we'd be taking notes, and we'd have to go back and try and create a game based on a movie that isn't finished yet. And then there were instances to where the director on the movie set would decide to change the script on the fly. He'd just call him audible. And he'd change the location or whatever. A location that we had been building for 2 weeks in 3D. Texturing and lighting it, putting in all the shaders that needed to happen, designing gameplay mechanics around it, only to find out, well, that's been dropped from the movie. Or it's no longer part of the script of the movie, and if we put it in the game, there's going to be a serious disconnect. It's like, But those are things that happen in game development. I'm sorry if this is a downer. I'm not trying to be a downer. That's kind of how it is. So again, we're talking about the game design document. Going back to that, and I discussed a little bit about this while we were having problems with Dell. It's usually neglected by artists. The more you know, the more you can add to the design. Of course, having an idea of the story, having an idea of the limitations, that allows you to work within those confines, which is actually really important because last thing you want to do is start working on something that will never be realized, or you're told that it's just not going to fit, or it's just wrong. Better to understand what the limitations are and still push on those walls, but yet understanding, again, the limitations. What's the character's focus, their talent, their agenda? All that's in the game design document. It's the Bible. Tells you what the story is, tells you what the characters are, or at least it should. And what will the character be doing a high percentage of the time? Again, this will help define our pipeline. So you're not necessarily working on details, again, that will never be realized or be on camera, or the player will never just really get down to that button combination that will really pull off that move. They'll be doing running and walking and swimming 80% of the time, so you want to make sure that you're making those look really great before you're starting to dedicate a lot of time on all these different specialty moves that they realize maybe 1 or 2% of the time. So again, we're reiterating, how can you truly animate without knowing why and understanding the story? We're just talking about that, and what type of story or what type of game is it going to be? Is the design talking about? Is it a thinking game? Is there dialogue? Is there puzzles? Is it a running, gunning or stealth? Is it a platformer, jumping, specialty moves? Again, it helps focus the mind share of where you need to dedicate your detail towards. And a lot of times, you're only going to get that through the design document. And so, don't necessarily rely on people to tell you all the time what it is you're going to be doing. It's good that you take initiative on your own and get your butt out of the chair and go and find information, read the design documents, so you have a real intimate knowledge as to what it is you're working on and dedicating your time to. A lot of times, a lot of artists and a lot of creatives they only take ownership up to a certain point. It's like, oh, I was told what to do, and I'm taking a very minimalistic approach. I don't want to do much research, and I just want to do my job and go home. It's just like, no, really try and invest yourself and realize that what you're doing is important and pursue excellence. Just another silly believe somebody actually put that on the body. I'm sure Patrick is stoked though. All right, now here's another funny thing is that we run into a lot of times, just because you can doesn't mean you should. In Fugitive Hunter, we spend a lot of money on motion capture for a lot of the NPCs and a lot of the enemies, to where we actually had guys on rigs and wires and they were running up walls, and it was really cool. I mean, total Jackie Chan, Jet Li stuff. And so, you know, since we'd invested a lot of money, at least Atari had invested a lot of money on this, the developer was like, well, boy, we've got all these great motion capture files and everything. Why don't we put them on some of like the bums in the street and you know, the transients, you know, that are drunk and lining the walls. So when your character walks down the alleyway, they'll run up and they'll flip over and you'll be beating up drunk people that are moving like Jet Li. And it's just like, again, disconnect. It's just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's like, go back to the story. You know, if you start throwing stuff like that in the game, you're going to break immersion. Sure, it looks cool, but is it applicable? So those are things to think about. And you know, again, we call that kind of feature creep. And an example that I have from The Force Unleashed was an interesting example where we were, a lot of us were in the room, producers and directors and different things like that, and George was there, and we were talking in essence about, you know, The Force Unleashed, and we were talking about certain elements of the game that we wanted to have, you know, from the lightsabers to the blasters, and the Corellian ships, and the Corvettes, and the Jedi Starfighters, and the thermal grenades, and different things like that. And it was starting to get pretty spirited and pretty passionate. Everybody had their own opinions of what it is they wanted to realize in this title. And then George came up, and he was kind of like, what's the name of the game? I'm like, well, it's The Force Unleashed. And he says, exactly. Make me a game as if there was no lightsaber, no Jedi Starfighter, no blaster, no nothing, that you just had to have a game that you could beat with just the Force. And it was really cool because he took all this feature creeping, he took all these creatives that had good ideas, but he brought them all back together to focus on that one idea, and that's what The Force Unleashed became, was just force push, force pull, force repulse, force crush, force chill, force, you know, all this other stuff. And it was like, wow, this is really different. This is very innovative. It was really cool. It dedicated a lot of technology towards realizing that. But it gave us a vision and kept us from feature creeping. There comes a point in game development where the design doc starts to go like this. There has to come a point to where it starts going like this. Otherwise, you're going to be creating art and assets and programming and code all the way up until you've got to deliver the game, which means that you're going to have half-baked ideas, unrealized mechanics, things that are broken, things that QA is still trying to figure out, that they haven't tested through. You know, so you have to be careful of how much feature creeping you want to do. How many of you guys would rather play a game that had an amazing 8-hour experience or a game that had a 20-hour experience but was okay? 8 hours, most of you know, that would want to have something epic and memorable and that you could share on Facebook and that you can talk with friends about and different things like that. But, you know, a lot of times marketing thinks that, no, we've got to have lots of content. You know, we've got to make it feel, you know, we've got to give people the bang for their buck, right? I always used to just make fun of Atari. I always said that Atari had the best marketing. They could sell an empty box. I mean, they could, because they would spend half their production budget on bus billboards and, you know, commercials on G4 and TNT and, you know, all these different things. But their games were just, they were just horrible for the most part. Not the games I would play. But, all right. Now this, you take anything away from this, this is the most important thing to understand, is camera in a game, because it dictates everything. And I'm going to explain why in an interview that I did.
Hey there everyone, welcome to GameCreatorsVault.com. Mark Soderwall here, and I'm just doing a quick vlog to just kind of explain a technique that we use in pre-production when we're making video games. And a lot of it has to do with where the camera is going to be positioned. Now, a lot of times through production, the camera is always getting tweaked to just try and find the best field of view, the best vantage points. But as far as from an art production standpoint, as well as a design production standpoint, it's great to know where the camera is going to be positioned, especially when starting to build out your artwork. It allows you to be able to understand how to go about drawing and framing compositionally a lot of the concepts, what kind of reference images to start looking at. It's a great technique if you're able to utilize it and find out from the designer as well as from the engineers in the technical side of game production where that camera is going to be. A lot of times in first-person shooter games, the camera is very much at eye level, so a lot of the artwork that you're going to construct or the visuals that you're going to start to design initially are going to be, it's best to take it from that perspective. The same with like an RTS, a real-time strategy game, where the camera is kind of pulled back and up, what we call more of an isometric view. It's great to start designing artwork and laying out character designs and environment designs from that vantage point is really necessary. So in an RTS game, you're looking at what is going to be best visually represented from more of a top-down perspective. So you're not going to necessarily worry about drawing in details concerning the bottoms of feet or shoelaces, so to speak. You're going to be trying to bring out a lot of the visuals concerning like the heads and the armor pads, the top areas of the uniforms, of trees, of cliffs. You know, and it also starts to give you a better idea as to, especially when drawing textures, where to place the lion's share of your texture pages dedicated to that perspective. In first-person shooter games, a lot of times you're not necessarily too worried about what the ceiling is going to be like or what ledges up high are going to look like, because rarely does the character or the player get up to those levels. You know, most of the time they're looking around at things that are most important, like hallways and floors and doors. What we call points of interest is where, again, you want to dedicate the lion's share of your artwork towards. So getting an idea of where that camera is going to be placed is literally a best practice when starting to build out your visual designs for pre-production. An example of where we utilized a lot of the camera placement and having an understanding of where that camera was going to be as far as gameplay goes. What we did at LucasArts with Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron. Again, it was a PSP title, so we were very, very tight on memory, on texture budgets and model budgets. So having an idea of where that camera was going to be was very, very important, especially when building out the models and the textures. We knew that it was going to be more from a horizon perspective, a first-person / third-person type of perspective. So we knew that the player was going to be seeing the backs of the characters a lot. Let's say for vehicles, we knew that we weren't really necessarily going to be getting on top or on the bottom, so to speak, of vehicles. And so we wanted to make sure that the sides of the vehicles, like the tank tracks, the treads, you know, if they were hover vehicles, that the textures for those vehicles were really pretty. Because we knew we weren't necessarily going to be jumping on top of tanks or watching them flip over because they just basically exploded into bits. And so that gave us a real advantage as to knowing how to go about constructing a lot of the visuals for the game.
All right. So again, you know, I think that kind of sums up again where the camera, you know, dictates a lot of how your art pipeline needs to be built out. And so understanding where that camera is going to be obviously is very, very important. You know, we talked about the first-person camera. We talked about the RTS, you know, the isometric camera, and then even, you know, side-scrolling like platforming type of games, like a Sonic or a Mario or something like that. You know, where you know that you're not necessarily going around the backs of certain objects. So again, you can dedicate kind of the lion's share again, of your texture pages or the things that you might be limited by way of memory, you can make sure that you know what is going to be in front of the camera 95 to 100% of the time is going to look smacking cool. And so another thing in games is that we like to do is we like to do early on is what is called visual targets, to where, again, it's a lot like where we'll kind of create simple concepts, but it gives us kind of a roadmap early on as to what we want the game to look like once we're all done. And so if you look at like this example, you know, you've got this very, you know, beautiful transition which started out as, you know, just this really blocked out basic geometry 3D, but then we took it to an artist, a concept artist, who sat down with the designer and said, here's the epicness of the world I want, here's the mood, here's the lighting, here's the saturation, here's the values and whatever. And so the concept artist started to realize and started to paint this out, which was fantastic. And the great thing is now the programmer can come in and be like, all right, so we want to do this kind of lighting. Now, is this going to be real-time lighting, or is this going to be baked in? Is the character going to be going under this light, and then it's going to come out of shadow into light and back into shadow? Okay, that's something we have to take into consideration by way of code and memory. Oh, I see we've got water. Okay, we might have to have some fluid physics. Ooh, that's not going to work very well. You know, so again, you see where I'm going? People can start to come in and vet where the visual target, if it's going to be real or unreal. And again, that helps break and understand the art pipeline so that people aren't wasting time at building out water physics and fluid, knowing that it will never be realized in the game because they're just not going to have the time, budget, money, or memory to realize it. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about HUD, the heads-up display, which I like to call the freckled-faced, red-headed stepchild of the industry, just because it's usually the last thing that's thought about. And HUD plays such an important role. And there's too many designers rely too heavily on the HUD. There's things where, doing research on other games and having experience of other games that kind of maybe share your same genre, is good to find out what works and what doesn't work. Kevin Manning, lead artist from Fallout 3 New Vegas. How many of you have heard of that game? Okay. Kevin's a great friend. He says, UI is often used to cover up certain part of art. The focus should be on the game world, characters, and objectives, not the menu system, mini-maps, and inventory. Now, Kevin likes to rant, so he's got a very strong opinion. But, case in point, I'm finding that a lot more games are starting to go more minimalistic on their HUD because they're able to realize a lot more game and design in the actual environment themselves that dictates to the player where to go or what their health is like, how much ammo they've got. So they're finding new and inventive ways to realizing that. Again, HUD is in front of the player almost 100% of the time. It has to compositionally work. It can't occlude too much. Now, like if you look at, here at Metroid Prime, they put the HUD inside the helmet, to really create that kind of immersion. Now, where some people might feel, oh, it's claustrophobic or whatever, it works for this title because the whole game is based on Samus, who's this character, and you're playing her and you're going through and you're experiencing all this stuff with her, which is awesome because that's one of the things that's hard to do in first-person shooter games is because all you see is your hands and your gun, you feel really disconnected from the avatar, from the character, because you're not always seeing them. So in a way, this is still kind of a cool way to stay connected with Samus, this character. And the other thing is that a lot of these HUD elements, even though they're occluding part of the environment, they're still semi-translucent, so you can still see shapes moving behind them. And then, of course, you get things like Dead Space, where Isaac, their HUD was very minimalistic. Health bar is actually on his back. Number of rounds are actually a hologram that comes out of the weapons. So it's a heads-up display right there on the weapons. And so it frees up all of this empty space and peripheral just so you can concentrate on the environment and what's coming after you and trying to eat your guts. Another funny picture. All right. How are we doing on time? Okay.
What's the golden ratio?
What's that?
The golden ratio.
All right. The golden ratio, or the rule of thirds. This is something that's obviously used in cinema quite a bit. You know, how it's just like, you're always wondering, you never question, you know, in real life, you're usually used to seeing somebody straight on. But if this was the movie screen, a lot of times when people are talking, they're over on usually one side of the screen, and then there's just this empty space. You know, when I was younger, I'm just like, I was always trying to lean the camera to center, you know, the character more. It's just like, why is this out here, and whatever. For whatever reason, it helps set scene, it helps tell story, it gives context to, you know, the background, establishing shots while the character is still talking. One of the things that I'm finding with the improvement of technology and with PS3 and the 360 is the fact that games are becoming very much more epic and cinematic, and so we're starting to see this golden ratio, this rule of thirds, being applied in games. You know, one of the reasons why is because, again, it kind of opens up the play area. In Fracture, when we were putting this game together, notice how the character's kind of pushed off to the side, which opens up this whole play area, which is fantastic, which again is applying the rule of thirds, golden ratio. And even though the target ridicule is still in the center, the character is still pushed off to the side, but there's still enough of the character there to where you can appreciate it. The funny thing is, good old George, when we first started out making the game, it was a first-person shooter game, all right? And then about 5 months into production, when a lot of the stuff was set and we were starting to build assets, he's like, you know what? I want to make it a third-person shooter game. We're like, oh my Lord, how can you do this to us? You know, so we had to go back in. Now we had to create the character literally, you know, from scratch. So because all we really made was the construction of his arms up to about right here. You know, because all we really saw was just his gun right here and loading an ammo clip and coming back down. You know, and meleeing and whatever. So that added a little bit of a wrinkle to the production. But at the same time, I understood why, because George, whether you have an opinion he's good at stories or not, it's totally open debate. But I mean, the thing is like like what we were talking about, in a first-person shooter game, you're really disconnected from the avatar. And he didn't want that, because Fracture was very much a story-based and a character-based game that was, you know, in the future, and it dealt with, it's not important. But I mean, the thing is he wanted the player to be able to see the character and connect and be associated with the character, and that's why he made the dramatic move to take from a first person, pull the camera back, and now have the third person. But we still wanted to have that cinematic feel, so we applied the golden ratio, kicked the character off to the side. But we weren't just the only studio to do that. You know, I understand. There's plenty of games that have that epicness to them. Batman, Resident Evil, Uncharted, you know, and we're going to watch a little bit of an example of just some gameplay footage from Batman that will show you exactly what I mean. And now that you're kind of aware as to what to look for about the character being moved to the side of the screen and how the camera trues itself to push the character to the side and different things like that, it'll become blatantly obvious, but that's the point. So take a look at this.
Marcus 245.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Sorry, there's no sound effect here. See the camera still off. So the camera comes behind him and up close when he goes into his run to kind of make it a little bit more you know, interesting, almost like that total documentary Saving Private Ryan. You know, the cameraman's running right behind, you know, beside the soldier, as it were. But again, even when he's spraying on the ground, the camera doesn't try and come over his head or whatever. It still kicks to the side, so you can still see with his right hand what it is that he's doing. Ridicule still in the middle. He's still off to the side. Again, the camera is just really trying to open up the field of view so you don't feel confined and your peripherals lost. This was all very intentional. in the design of the game. Even the camera during the battle scenes, you know, making sure that it still had enough peripheral so you had an understanding of where all the enemies were at, so you didn't have somebody just sucker punching you off the screen because you couldn't see them. And then also knowing where those moments of the of special moves to where you could go into the cinematic like you just saw, where you can go really close up as he's coming down, those real intense smashing moments, which is so gratifying. Just awesome. All right, so becoming more popular in HUD design, we kind of talked about that. Environmental layout and camera positioning, yes, we talked about that. And here's a random question I just want to throw out to everybody. Interesting statistic that only 1/3 of gamers actually finish a game. Does anybody have any idea why? I really don't have an answer. I'm just curious as to why. What do you think that is?
Probably a combination of just the impression that everyone has ADD, and also there's way too many good games out there. You know, you just you start it, and then like 2 weeks later, the next great game comes out, and you get that one.
Okay, I'll take one more.
I did a little research on it, particularly in relation to demos. And one reason they found why demos do not actually sell games is because players get enough of the sensation of the demo that they don't feel like they need to play the game anymore. And that would be why they wouldn't finish a game as well.
That's very interesting. We got that on tape, I hope. That's good. So now we're kind of talking a little bit about story, and I am landing the plane soon, so you know, please stay awake. Rob Kelly, who's the lead designer of Guitar Hero Rock Band, one of the things that he kind of came to realize was the fact that, you know, look to break up your game into thirds. Again, he's now applying the golden ratio towards game design. It's like, huh, that's interesting. Until you reach what he calls bite-sized chunks. Translating into about 15 to 20-minute areas of gameplay until the next reward is offered. Now, obviously, that's depending on genre, of course. You know, some games are quicker, some games are smaller. But the whole thing about games is that the biggest bang for the least amount of effort. You know, I mean, that's kind of why we like to play games, because it allows us to do something epic with very minimalistic type of effort. I mean, that's what's so appealing about it. But if you don't reward the player enough, it starts to get tired, and then all of a sudden you don't get as big a bang for the buck, because it's like, good Lord, I really had to work towards, you know, this, and instead of getting, you know, an amazing show or cinematic or whatever, I just get a little, another jewel for my sword. You know, it's not great, you know. So having an understanding of what is going to keep the player interested, and the timing of that, the pacing of the game, when those rewards are interjected, is very, very important. Let's say you have a game that's a 9-hour experience. Again, golden ratio, rule of thirds. 9-hour experience. Think about breaking the game up into 3 acts. Each of the acts has, let's say, 3 hours each of gameplay. And then each act is broken up into a start, a middle, and an end. Again, golden ratio, rule of thirds. You know, and each of those acts is 1 hour. And then in each one of those acts, you have these sessions of 20-minute, potentially pockets of minimal type of gameplay. But again, rule of thirds, breaking it literally all the way down into thirds. Again, not applicable to everything, but kind of a good foundation to at least start when you're thinking about a game design from end to end. Now, golden ratio for games, even, you know, talking about design is also talking about animation as well. You know, you've got anticipation, action, reaction. These 3 core fundamentals. Again, golden ratio, rule of thirds. So again, animation has utilized this approach of what we just showed. Anticipation, action, and reaction. Now, one of the ways that we were able to do this is for mini games for the Force Unleashed, is that we created, like in a boss battle, after you were saber throwing, you know, the ATST, and you were whacking it, and you were trying to get the health bar down to a certain point, and all of a sudden, boom, it sparked a mini game, to where now as a designer, we're able to say, okay, you've got it wounded so much so that now I want to give you the anticipation of hitting the square button. The player does the action of hitting the square button. The game provides the reaction of having something epic happen once that's executed. And basically, if we've done it right, the player will think that they've done all three actions themselves. I'll show you an example. So here's the apprentice. Star Killer, horrible name. All right, so there it is. You see the buttons? Something happens. Ooh, circle button. I'm going to lightning bolt this thing. Oh, there's a reaction. Ooh, the anticipation square. I'm going to just skewer everybody inside. Ah, square. There's it is. I'm going to crush it now. Boom. But see, I mean, that's a great mini game. It's again broken up into the rule of thirds: anticipation, action, reaction. All right, 5 more minutes. I think we can fit it all in. Everybody doing okay?
Mark, the next session doesn't start till 3:30, so if you want to let people leave if they need to at 3, but you're welcome to continue talking.
Oh no, that's fine. This will probably be done in about another 5 or 7 minutes. But I wanted to kind of open it up to questions as well.
Excellent.
So, how to get a job in games? All right, let's go ahead and see what. Now the video that I've shot is with Jim Rivers. And Jim Rivers he was a former student of mine when I was actually teaching. When I was working at Atari, I was doing adjunct teaching at the Art Institute, and he was one of my students. Jim, horrible artist. It was really unfortunate that he spent a lot of money in his education because he was not going to be competitive in the industry, and he was going to become an artist and an animator. And I mean, he was really bad. But God bless him. He's in the industry now. We were able to identify gifts that he did have, and that was networking and the ability to communicate with people and help them realize their dreams. He was a sword bearer. I mean, he was awesome. And now he's one of the industry's top recruiters and educators about how to get into games and how to set up your resume, how to do portfolios. He works at Obsidian Entertainment that did fall out. And, anyways, I sat down with Jim, because we've known each other for a while. We were at this Mexican restaurant, so it's a little loud. And, because I'm such a great filmer, I actually was pointing the camera right into the sunlight. So you're going to see him somewhat silhouetted. It's disgraceful, I know. But basically, asking Jim, how do you go about getting a job in games?
Once you're a tester...
All right, that wasn't bad. This is it.
Jim, why would you reject somebody at GDC? I like the unfolding the resume out of the back pocket story. That was awesome.
Nobody ever believes me when I tell them that, but we've already had that twice this week. If you come to my booth and you are unkept, uncaring, you're coming to impress us. I mean, once you get in, great. You can wear flip-flops every day and wear your boxers to work. That's fine. But for one day out of the year, press your clothes, wash your clothes. Don't smell like you just slept in a trash can. If you know you have sweaty hands, dry them before you shake my hand. I've already gone through a gallon of hand sanitizer. Wear deodorant. Brush your teeth. Have a story. Know who you are. If you get up there and I ask you, who you are and what you do, don't stare at me and going, look, I know you're nervous. I get it. Okay, being nervous is cool. But if you're that nervous around crowds and around people, start interviewing yourself in the mirror before you do it. Because then at least you can see yourself and realize what a complete buffoon you look like. And you're not looking at us and moving on my tablecloth. It's been interesting, and so when my friends and colleagues actually sit and watch us at the booth and see the barrage of people
Jim. Now, granted, Jim, it was at the end of the conference. He was very tired, so he was quite punchy. He's usually not that direct, you know, it's just like, I've already gone through a gallon of hand sanitizer. He's like, I hate these students, I hate these newbies that are coming in these days. Just, oh, go away. No, he's not like that at all. It's just I caught him at a very candid moment, as it were. Let me show you one more, and then we can go ahead and close this down and take some questions. Now, this is Adam Bellin. So Adam was an executive at EA and at Atari, and this guy's been around for a while and has seen a lot of game developments. So he's got a lot of really good insight as well.
Once you're a tester, now you're in the ecosystem. Now you see and talk to other producers and you learn the language on the teams. Yeah. Now, testers are some of the lowest paid people on the totem pole. However, when you're getting near the end of a project in the filing phase, they're the most important people. You know? Now, when I was filing games at EA, I figured out over the years that, you know what? Everybody is part of the same team. Don't get the programmer's sushi and the tester's pizza. Everybody come to the same table and eat the same food, okay? And so, you know, treat them with respect because they are your friends. If you want them to stay all night, you know, never bring dinner in before like 7 or 8, by the way. Right. Otherwise they'll eat and go home. But bring it later. And so, once you have access and exposure to the opportunities, then the talented people are also recognized by all the people they're exposed to. So at EA and any large company, for the lower positions like assistant producer, interning, that kind of thing, it's always word of mouth. You know, we don't interview for those positions. You don't look at resumes. You actually are looking usually inside the company. So it's usually the path is going to be tester, assistant, the tester who wants to be in the game business goes from tester to becoming either maybe artist, creative person, or assistant producer, then associate producer, and producer. You know, and if they're really good, they keep growing from there. But we're usually not interviewing for the lowest positions. We're usually hiring from within for those positions. So get in the door anyone you can. Yeah, and so if you're coming out of school and you're an artist, maybe you have to be a tester. Maybe you have to, maybe you're a fine artist, but you have to do what we call pixel pushing, production artwork, where you're just, you know, scaling things down, you're taking what people tell you, and you're cleaning up frames or doing background removal or whatever it might be. Maybe you have to do that for a little while. Well, at home, you're secretly out using light boxes and painting with oils or whatever. But that is still the door. You get your foot in the door, and all of a sudden you're exposed to the positions that become available that are not advertised and not interviewed for. And so you get a green position, a lower level position in that department, and then all of a sudden you can shine. And if you're good, you can shine. But you have to do what you love, because if you walk away from that, then you're not going to be the most valuable person you can be. You got to do what you're good at. Yeah. You got to be passionate about it. You got to do what you're really good at. Right. That's the key. Yeah. If you're doing what you're not good at, you know, you're just going to be running through the motions. It's just going to be.
All right. Basically, there was a really interesting quote by Donald Trump that, you know, I mean, here's, in the world's eyes, here's a guy that is obviously very successful. He's a billionaire, he's an influencer, business mogul, all that kind of stuff. But in a candid interview, he sat there and said, you know, unless you're doing what it is you love and have a desire for, you're not going to be happy. Money doesn't bring you happiness. He's like, I'm not happy because I have money. In fact, because I have so much money, I actually have more stress. If I wasn't doing what I love to do, which is really, you know, is real estate and this type of thing, what it is he loves to do, he'd be miserable, you know? And so, again, we're talking about desire earlier, we're talking about passion earlier, and so really what it comes down to is what you have a passion for and what you feel is going to be most fulfilling is really what is going to, you know, make you the most happy and the most content and the most satisfied. So we went over a lot of different things. Again, I'm sorry, I feel like I threw a lot of curves and stuff at you. But awesome. That's great. So is everybody else. Everybody's been updated.